I've recently started shooting events in a different way. What I used to do, use 3 zoom lenses, 24 to 70, 2.8, 70 to 200, 2.8, and a super wide 11/16, also 2.8. I'd have 2 bodies, one camera slung over this shoulder, one camera slung over that shoulder, and I'd generally rock the two 70 to 200 and 24 to 70. And when I needed to squeeze the whole event in, I'd use the super wide. And this works pretty well, and haven't had any problems really, apart from the fact that exposure wise, in some of these halls that are really dim, I tend to be just on the cusp of decent exposure, always shooting at 2.8. And I was doing this event recently, and this hall was just so dim. And I thought, something just told me, why don't you use that nifty 50 that you always have in your bag that you never use? Goes down to 1.8. So I flung it on, and it was amazing. For the first time, everything was super bright, I had exposure to play with. Images kind of popped. There was not that grain. I didn't have to bump the ISO up to compensate so much. I thought, this is great. And that got me thinking, why don't I try a different approach? So that's just what I did. Now I got hold of a 85mm 1.8. I have a 35mm prime f2.0, and I'm after a 135 f2 to replace the 70 to 200 2.8. I shot an event with just the 2 that I do have, the 85 1.8 and the 35 2.0. And wow, the difference is amazing. Astounding. Images all of a sudden are all bright. Exposure is correct. I have room to play with. Colors are popping because the ISO isn't bumped up. And I thought, wow, why didn't I do this sooner? I mean, I've heard of this 2 different ways of shooting events, zooms versus primes, but I didn't think the effect would be that great, that much better. There's pros and cons to both ways. The 2.8s, they weigh a ton, and I got these sore shoulders from slinging cameras over and humping them around. Got a bad back as I'm getting older. So, the reduction in weight in using primes is a welcome benefit, as well as the other benefits that you do get. Of course, with the zooms, because they're variable, you can always make sure, you're always guaranteed that you're going to get the shot in the right frame, because you can zoom. And that's a trade-off. When you've got the primes, you can't do that. So you have to move around a lot more. But it's definitely made me think and opened my eyes. I tried shooting without the straps as well. In the last event that I was at, just carried because I was using primes and the cameras were lighter, I actually just balanced them in my hands. And that was quite liberating doing that. Apart from the point where I dropped one of the cameras in the church. Boof, 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 boof. Everybody looked around. Ouch. I just quietly picked it up and continued. It's all good though. So in conclusion, I think I'm going to try this a bit more. Experiment with the primes a little bit more before I decide whether I'm going to ditch the zooms. Maybe I'll keep both and just switch between two. I'll let you know what I do and report back when there's more to report.